when a 16-year-old girl found a dying stranger on a street corner the morning of her final exam, the test that would determine her entire future. She had seconds to decide. Save herself or save someone she'd never met. What she chose changed 3 lives forever. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world are you tuning in from. We love seeing how far our stories travel. Ruby Rhodes stood frozen on Hartwell Street at exactly 7:22 a.m. on a Tuesday morning that would fracture her life into before and after. Her backpack hung heavy on her shoulders, stuffed with 2 pencils, a calculator, and the student ID that was supposed to get her into the most important exam of her 16 years. But none of that mattered now because slumped against a brick wall of Patterson Corner store, barely visible in the early morning shadows, was a woman who couldn't breathe. Ruby's phone screen glowed in her trembling hand. 38 minutes until her final comprehensive exam started. 38 minutes to get across Cedar Grove, Illinois, board the bus and make it to Lincoln Heights Academy before the doors closed. No exceptions. No makeups. Miss this test. Repeat the entire junior year. Watch all her friends graduate without her. The woman's head lifted slightly, and even in the dim light Ruby could see the swelling, the pale, clammy skin, the way her chest heaved with shallow, desperate gasps. "Help!" the word came out as barely a whisper. "Please!" Ruby's father's voice echoed in her head. The same warning he'd given her since she was old enough to walk to school alone. Keep your head down. Stay safe. Don't get involved in things that aren't your business. Every logical thought screamed at her to keep walking, to pretend she hadn't seen anything, to protect the future she'd worked so hard to build. But the woman's eyes found hers, pleading, terrified. Ruby's feet moved before her brain could stop them. She dropped to her knees beside the woman. Up close, she could see this wasn't just any woman. The expensive suit, designer handbag, diamond earrings catching the streetlight. This was someone important, someone who should have people to help her. But right now, she had no one except a 16-year-old girl who was supposed to be on a bus. What happened? What's wrong? Ruby's voice cracked with panic. The woman's lips moved, barely forming words. Her hand shot out with surprising strength and gripped Ruby's wrist. Banana. Ruby's mind raced through every health class, every biology lesson she'd absorbed in her relentless pursuit of good grades. The swelling throat, the hives crawling up the woman's neck, the wheezing breaths. Allergic reaction. You ate banana and you're having an allergic reaction. The woman managed the smallest nod and then her eyes began to flutter closed. No, stay with me. Please stay with me. Ruby looked around frantically. The street was completely empty. Patterson's wouldn't open for another hour. The autumn leaves rustled in the breeze. And somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, but no help was coming. 7:26. Ruby's hands shook so badly she could barely unlock her phone. She dialed 911, her breath coming in short gasps that matched the woman's labored breathing. 911, what's your emergency? There's a woman, Hartwell Street, corner of 5th. She can't breathe, allergic reaction, her throat is closing. Please send help now. Ma'am, help us on the way. Stay calm. Can you tell me? I can't stay, Ruby interrupted, her voice rising. Henderson Pharmacy, 2 blocks, EpiPen. She's going to die if I don't. She dropped the phone and ran. Her lungs burned. Her backpack slammed against her spine with every stride. She'd never been athletic. All her time went to studying, to trying to be perfect, to making her dad proud. But now she ran like her life depended on it, because someone's life did depend on it. Ruby crashed through the door of Henderson's 24-hour emergency window, startling the night shift pharmacist so badly he knocked over his coffee. EpiPen, she gasped. Woman dying. Allergic reaction. Banana, throat closing, please. The pharmacist, his name tag read Ron, took one look at the pure terror in this teenager's eyes and grabbed his keys. Anaphylaxis. Yes, she can't breathe. I don't know how long. Please, I have to go back. Ron's hands moved with practice deficiency, pulling an epinephrine auto-gendetta from the locked cabinet. Do you know how to administer this health class? We practiced. Yes. Yes, I know. Outer thigh. Hold for 10 seconds. I know. Ruby was already moving toward the door. Thank you, thank you. Go, I'm calling it in. The run back felt longer. Every second stretched into an eternity. Ruby's mind kept conjuring the worst, arriving to find the woman already gone, the street corner empty except for a designer handbag and the ghost of a choice that came too late. But when she rounded the corner onto Hartwell Street, the woman was still there, barely. Her breathing had deteriorated to a thin whistle. Her lips were taking on a blue tinge. One hand clutched at her throat in a futile attempt to pull in air that wouldn't come. Ruby dropped beside her, fingers fumbling with the EpiPen cap. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Health class had been one thing, a practice dummy, a classroom full of giggling students. No real stakes. This was different. This was life and death, and Ruby was the only one standing between them. She positioned the auto-injector against her outer thigh, right through the expensive suit pants. Please work. Please work. She pressed down hard. The click seemed impossibly loud in the quiet morning. Ruby held it there, counting in her head. 1, 2, 3. The woman's face was gray. 4, 5, 6. Was it supposed to take this long? 7, 8, 9. What if she'd done it wrong? 10. She pulled the injector away. For one terrible, endless moment, nothing happened. Then the woman gasped, a deep, ragged, beautiful inhale, and her eyes flew open. Ruby sat back on her heels, suddenly aware that tears were streaming down her face, that her whole body was shaking, that sirens were wailing in the distance. The woman's hand found hers and squeezed weakly. Ruby looked down at her phone screen. 8:17 a.m., 17 minutes after her exam had started. 17 minutes into a test she'd spent months preparing for. 17 minutes past the point of no return. The paramedics arrived like a cavalry in blue uniforms. They moved with efficient calm, asking Ruby questions. She answered automatically while her brain tried to process what she'd just done, what she'd just lost. As they loaded the woman onto a stretcher, now stabilized and breathing normally, one of the paramedics, a woman with kind eyes and graying hair, squeezed Ruby's shoulder. "You saved her life, sweetheart." That was textbook anaphylaxis response. "How old are you?" 16. 16. The paramedic shook her head in amazement. "Most adults would have kept walking. You're something special, you know that." Ruby didn't feel special. She felt like she'd just thrown away her entire future for a stranger. The woman on the stretcher, now with an oxygen mask covering half her face, reached out and grabbed Ruby's hand one more time. Her eyes were clearer now, focused and intense. "Thank you," she whispered behind the mask. "You saved my life. What's your name?" "Ruby Rhodes." "Ruby." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "Ruby Rhodes. I'm never going to forget that name." She started walking home, each step heavier than the last. The maple trees lining Hartwell Street had leaves just beginning to turn autumn colors. Ruby had always loved this time of year, the promise of change, of seasons shifting, of new beginnings. Now it just felt like endings. The walk home gave her too much time to think, too much time to replay every moment of the last hour, too much time to calculate exactly what she'd sacrificed. She thought about the polynomial equations she'd memorized, the essay structures she'd practiced, the 3 all-nighters she'd pulled in the past week alone, reviewing every possible topic that might appear on that exam. She thought about her father, Wesley, who worked 60-hour weeks at the warehouse so she could have a chance at college, who came home exhausted every night but still helped her study at their tiny kitchen table, who believed she was going to be the one to break them out of the cycle of barely making ends meet. What was she going to tell him? "Dad, I threw away everything we've worked for. I missed the exam. I'm going to repeat junior year. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The small apartment complex where they lived came into view. It wasn't much. Chipped paint, a parking lot full of old cars, windows covered with mismatched curtains. But it was home. And right now, Ruby wanted nothing more than to crawl into her bed and pretend this morning had never happened. But when she opened the door to their second-floor apartment, Wesley was already there. He sat at the kitchen table in his warehouse uniform, navy blue shirt with his name embroidered over the pocket, and the expression on his face broke something in Ruby's chest. The school had called him. Of course they had. "Dad," she started, but her voice crumbled. "The school said you didn't show up for your exam. They said you never walked through the doors." "Ruby, I left work. I've been calling you for 20 minutes. "Where were you? What happened?" And that's when Ruby completely fell apart. She collapsed into a chair, and the whole story came tumbling out between sobs. The woman on the street, the choice, the run to the pharmacy, the EpiPen, the paramedics, the exam time ticking away while she held a stranger's hand. Wesley listened without interrupting, his expression shifting from confusion to understanding to something Ruby couldn't quite read. When she finally finished, they sat in silence. The clock ticked loudly. Outside, someone's car alarm chirped off. "I messed up," she whispered. "Dad, I messed up so bad I'm going to have to repeat the whole year. All my friends are going to graduate without me. All that studying, all that work, it was for nothing. I threw it away. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Ruby, look at me." She lifted her head. Her father's eyes were red, but his voice was steady. "You didn't mess up. Do you hear me? You didn't mess up. But the exam, forget the exam." Wesley reached across the table and took both her hands in his. His palms were rough from years of manual labor, calloused from loading trucks and moving boxes, but his grip was gentle. "A woman is alive right now because of you. Do you understand what that means? Someone's daughter, someone's mother, someone's friend. She gets to go home tonight because my little girl was brave enough to stop. But you worked so hard so I can have a future. And I just Ruby." Wesley's voice cracked. "Your mother and I, we didn't raise you to be successful. We raised you to be good. And today you were good. Today. You were the person we always hoped you'd be." It was the first time he'd mentioned her mother in months. They didn't talk about Sarah Rhodes often. The grief was still too raw, even 5 years after she died in her sleep from an undiagnosed heart condition. 5 years since their world had split in half, leaving Wesley to raise their daughter alone on a warehouse worker's salary. Ruby had been 11 when she found her mother that morning, too young to understand the full weight of loss, but old enough to watch her father transform from a man who laughed easily to a man who carried worry like a second skin. "Mom would be disappointed in me," Ruby said quietly. "She always said education was the only way out." "Your mother would be proud of you," Wesley corrected firmly. "She worked 3 jobs to save for your college fund. She studied for her GED at night after you went to bed. She knew what education meant. But you know what she told me once? She said, 'Wheeze, I don't care if Ruby becomes a doctor or a teacher or works at the grocery store. I just want her to be kind because kindness is the only thing that really changes the world.'" Ruby's tears came harder. "I don't know what to do now. We'll figure it out." Wesley squeezed her hands. "Maybe there's a makeup exam. Maybe we can talk to the principal. Maybe you do repeat a year. And if you do, you'll still get where you're going. Your education isn't going anywhere, sweetheart. But that woman on the street, without you, she wouldn't have had tomorrow." They sat together at that small kitchen table for a long time, father and daughter, both of them scared about the future but certain about one thing. Ruby had made the right choice, even if it cost her everything. Ruby eventually went to her room and lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. The afternoon light filtered through her window, painting patterns on the walls covered with her achievement certificates and honor roll ribbons, proof that how hard she'd worked might not mean anything anymore. Her phone buzzed with text from friends. "Claire, everyone's asking where you were. Are you okay? Marcus, Ruby, what happened? You've been preparing for this test forever. Jenny, the exam was brutal. Call me when you can." Ruby turned her phone face down. She couldn't deal with that yet. Couldn't face the questions, the concern, the pity that would come when they learned what she'd done. Had anyone ever sacrificed their entire future for a stranger before? Had anyone been this stupid? But then she remembered the woman's eyes, the way they'd pleaded, the sound of her gasping for air, the terrifying blue tinge to her lips, and Ruby knew, even through the grief of losing this year, that she'd make the same choice again. She just hoped she wouldn't have to pay quite so much for it. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of Ruby trying to negotiate with the school administration. 2 weeks of hitting brick walls. The district had a firm policy. No makeups on final comprehensive exams except for documented emergencies. Meaning the student's own medical emergencies, not someone else's. "I understand what you did was noble." The vice principal had told her, sympathy genuine but hands tied. "But the policy exists for fairness. If we make an exception for you, we'd have to make exceptions for everyone. But I saved someone's life," Ruby had pleaded, "and that's admirable, truly. But it doesn't change district policy." So Ruby faced the reality. She'd be repeating junior year, starting over in the fall while Claire and Marcus and Jenny moved on to senior year without her. watching them graduate while she sat through another year of classes she'd already mastered. Wesley tried to stay positive. He'd say, "Maybe it's a blessing in disguise. You'll ace everything the second time around. Your GPA will be perfect." But they both knew the truth. Ruby had lost time.